appreciate all the waves. You all know that a piece of my rabbinate is a rabbinate of connection, and to be able to see people who can't be here means a lot to me. Hi. Here's my one little thing. If we could close the doors in the back, the sound comes in. Can everybody hear me in the back? Yay! Thank you. I have needed my faith this year. I've needed sacred text to guide me through moments where it feels like there is no guidance. And there's one line that I keep coming back to. It's a line that's said throughout the high holiday season, beginning in Elul and continuing through Sukkot. It's from Psalm 27. And here's the line. Chazak ve'amatz libecha. Say it with me. Chazak ve'amatz libecha. It means let your heart be strong and courageous. And I listen to that call for strength and courage, and I wonder where to find it. Do you know, in the past years, I've known what to say. But this year, I find myself struggling how to bring a community that has pieces of our broader polarization together. How, at a time when our society quickly runs to hair-trigger responses to write off those who disagree with us, and amidst a climate that creates of contempt and anger, what can be said that's real? Where do we find strength and courage when it feels so distant and elusive? And I promise you, you will not leave today with the answer. I want to explore with you. I want to share where I have found strength, knowing that my story may well be different than your story. And that may be the beginning of strength, to accept all of our differences with presence and love. So I want to begin with a great story of courage and strength. The more I've sat with this story, the more I've realized there are pieces to it that I need to explore more. It's not that long ago, but it was forever ago. 2013. In 2013, Ruth Calderon was a newly elected member of Knesset. For those of you who don't know her, Ruth Calderon is a secular Talmud scholar. She teaches Talmud at the university. She's a brilliant, brilliant teacher. And she was invited to give the opening speech in the Knesset. So she comes to the podium with a big volume of Talmud, which is the way a volume of Talmud should be. And behind her sits the speaker of the Knesset, Yitzchak Vaknin, from the ultra-Orthodox Shas party, who's watching her come up, and you can almost feel the skepticism that's emanating from him. So you need a little bit of background for those of you who don't know. The ultra-Orthodox do not believe that secular Jews, and especially women, should study Talmud, let alone teach it. So this woman coming up with a big old volume, I can only imagine what was in his heart. Courage. She is undaunted. She opens up the text and shares a troubling story. By the way, this story we will need to revisit as well. Listen to this story. It's the story of Rav Rachumi. And Rav Rachumi's wife is sitting and waiting for him to come home from yeshiva study in another town. It's Erev Yom Kippur. This is the one day of the year that he would come home. But he's so engrossed in his studies, he loses track of time. By the way, I understand that. He doesn't come home, and she waits and waits. And the text tells us that she shed a tear, and you feel that tear. And then it continues with an ending that is haunting. At that moment, the roof he was sitting on collapsed, and he died. By the way, what a disturbing story. What a distressing story. Why did she tell it? She told it to explore the stories within the story, to see the possibility of opposing groups in Israel coming together. Here's the story she saw. She says, who's Rav Rachumi? He's like the Haredim. He bears the weight of tradition and therefore devotes himself to full-time Torah study, because that's what holds our people up. By the way, of course he loses track of time, because this is a sacred endeavor. She uses the story to enter the Haredi world that is so foreign to her own, because when you enter another person's world that is foreign to yours with compassion and openness, doors open. And then she explored Rav Rachumi's wife, who for her was her camp, the secular Jews. They desperately want everyone to come home and help. Listen to what she said at that day. She said, sometimes we, the secular Jews, feel like the waiting woman, Rav Rachumi's wife. We serve in the army. We do all of the work. And then listen how she ended her speech. Both sides feel solely responsible for the well-being of our national home. And until I understand this, I will not perceive the problem properly and will not be able to find a solution. Both sides feel solely responsible for the well-being of our national home. Doesn't it feel like that's our moment? Until I understand this, until I can enter that story that feels so foreign, in fact, makes me angry, that turns me away, until I can enter that story and understand this, I won't understand the problem properly and won't be able to find a solution. For me, this is a story of amazing strength. The strength to gently go to such an uncomfortable place, the courage to see another who you may be in adversarial relationship with compassion, with care. By the way, she passionately believes and works for Haredim serving. She knows what she stands for. That's a piece of the strength in this story. And at the same time, she enters the story of those who see the world differently. And I want to suggest that if we could go back to, and I know it exists in some places now, but it feels so distant, a reality of curiosity, of empathy, of complexity, of respect, that we might be able as well to find strength and courage at this moment where solutions feel so distant and difficult. By the way, how did the story end? Does anyone know? Speaker Vaknin stands up to say something. And I'm a little freaked out. Is he going to say, Shah? Here's what he says. He says, well, I see something else in the story. And he gives his interpretation of the name Rahumi. She responds to him, Yesher Koach. Good point. Because when you can enter another's world with integrity and with care, doors open, and when you allow others to see you, they can change and transform as well. This story reminds us that we might create something different than our current reality of polarized anger. That for me is the courage that I want my heart to take. The courage to break out of the silo in which I know I dwell and to be able to enter other worlds. I won't be able to enter every world. I shouldn't. I can't. The moment demands an activism, but there are so many places where I might and I don't. I have to say, telling you that story, I thought about it. I turned it over and I said, come on. So much has changed since 2013. The story doesn't resonate anymore for all that it does. The breaches have grown wider. The anger has become more virulent and at times violent. Trauma is now part of our reality. And when you're amidst trauma, connecting to another person is almost impossible. These many years later, with ongoing war, with so much loss, with hostages remaining in captivity 718 grueling days, the intense division that defines this moment, both for Israelis and American Jews regarding Israel, with many protesting in anger government policy and many passionately defending with stridency those same policies. How could we ever find a way back to each other? And it's more than that. This is all done amidst anti-Semitism. This is all done amidst Israeli soldiers who are serving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days in the reserve, feeling such resentment to those who do not serve. This is being done at a time when people are tired. We're tired. Compassion, empathy, nuance get lost when each day brings new layers of suffering, fear, and rage. And honestly, from my end, it feels like it gets worse every day. Just when you feel it can't get any worse, it does. Do you all feel that as well? So how do we find strength and courage at a moment like this? How do I live? Chazak v'amat libecha. Let your heart be strong and courageous. And I want to give some humble suggestions to open discussion. Strength, chizuk, comes when we know who we are. As we clarify what we believe, a humble path forward begins to emerge. And as much as I feel pulled to this idea or that idea, when I reground myself in sacred Jewish texts and values, I find my voice. I find my truths. I try to find the courage that comes from struggling. How do I apply this to the moment, knowing that there isn't an easy answer? But strength comes from knowing who we are. And so, what do I ask of you? Who are you? By the way, I'm not asking which newspaper you read or which political ideology you have. I'm asking you, who are you in terms of your core beliefs, in terms of who you are? And I want to share with you the core beliefs that drive me. They give me strength. that give me a call to activism, and that leave me with more and more questions. By the way, I know not everybody grabbed one, but I put these questions, these values in the service folder. So grab one on the way out if you don't have one, because what I want to do is I want to have a conversation about what are our sacred values, how do we apply them. My friend who read my sermon says, you got too many values you're trying to do here, they're going to get lost. I said, I'll put them in the service folder. Take it home. For those of you who don't have a service folder in front of you, I think you'll be able to follow as I go through them. I need to share from the outset that values don't always lead to singularity when it comes to application. And we've become a world that demands singularity. Rabbi, you must say X in order to be moral. When I study these sacred values, sometimes I find so many multiple ways to A, interpret, B, to live. And for me, it's the discussion amongst us as to how to do that that leads us to what we need to do. It's the courage to engage with all of the different points of view rather than demanding that it only be mine. That's the courage I need as I hear all of those other angry voices flying. I believe in multiplicities while also believing that some things lend themselves to singularity. Weaving that line, finding that balance, for me is the spiritual call of the moment. I want to share that this is not easy to write or even to share. I know some people come and they really only want to hear their own truth validated by their rabbi. They turn a deaf ear, they get a little angry, they may even storm off. I hope you don't. When it's not preached. God, we're sensitive. And I understand that. I am sensitive these days. I sometimes tune out, turn off, and get a little angry when I hear something that offends my moral sensibilities that someone really believes. So this is not an easy sermon. You may not like an interpretation I bring, but I want to ask you something hard. I want to ask you to sit with me, to sit with it. My daughter Emily, who's online, teaches yoga, and she says at the beginning of class, she asks everyone to take a breath and to sit with whatever comes up. Here's what happens as I face sacred truths. I face contradictions. Imperfect truths emerge, because I do not believe this is a time when we can let multiplicity of views render us passive and inactive. For me, courage, the courage that I ask of myself, is the hard work of struggling, the capacity to say, I don't know, or this is the best I can come up with amidst honest struggle. By the way, this is not an easy sermon to give, because the values I'm going to share with you and how I apply them, I need more time for every single one to develop as thoughtfully as they need to be developed. And I know that in a sermon, you can't stay past lunchtime. But let's develop these ideas together. Let's go deeper. And I would imagine that some of your responses to me will be, yes, Rabbi, but, and what about, and you didn't account for, and you're right. That's what makes this sermon on a certain level hard to get. But there's a deeper reason why this is a not easy sermon to give. It's not easy to share, here are my sacred values, because I intensely feel the pain between the gap between these sacred truths and the current realities. And I want to suggest that courage may be the capacity to accept that discomfort. It may be that I have always felt I need to give a message and people leave with that message. And hopefully it's a message that resonates. And maybe this year a piece of that message needs to be, let's find the courage to sit with the gap between aspiration and reality. And that leaves me so pained. That gap between my sacred values and what I'm witnessing in our world is tragic to my heart. That's why this is such a hard sermon to give. And courage means accepting that discomfort and feeling the emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, pain. That is this moment. I want us all to have the courage to enter into those emotions. So if you have that sheet, take a look at it. This is to open discussion. I hope some of these resonate. It's always nice when you agree with me. I hope that these motivate. That's always good when we can find a response together. But I also hope that this can be the beginning of sacred disagreement, of dispute, of talking. I think that that's the way of our people. We argue and we listen. We know that there are different truths, and when God responds to an argument where different truths come out, God says, these and these are the words of the living God. Which is it, God? Both. Take these values and let's let them drive us to one another. Each voice matters. And that's maybe another reason this is a hard sermon. This is not just about me. What did the rabbi say? This is about us and us having the sacred discussion around values. Because my deepest truth and strength is the discussion about values and activism allow hearts to remain linked, like the story I brought you with Ruth Calderon and Yitzhak Vaknin. The discussions about values and activism allow us to find common cause. They loved text together. By the way, while this sermon focuses on Israel and American Jewish response to Israel, each of these values also speaks deeply to what's going on in America. That's another sermon. So what's my first value? My first value is Klal Yisrael, the Jewish peoplehood. Jewish peoplehood pulls at my heart in such deep ways. I feel a connection to Jews everywhere. From the earliest of time, we are called a nation. We're connected to a land. Jewish peoplehood, Klal Yisrael, drives me. It creates loyalty. It creates connection. It creates a response of Hineni. Here I am to all of you. I am present. I am responsible. I am needing you. And if you asked me the pain between reality and aspiration, it's that people have lost that deep connection. We need each other. We need each other. And if you ask me where my strength comes from, a piece of my strength comes from the fact that we have been here for each other. I think I can face the reality in a different way because of each of you who I share community with. That's real strength. It's real strength. It strengthens my heart. Chazak libecha. And so I ask that that Jewish peoplehood be something that can hold your hearts and strengthen your hearts. Being part of a people gives me a history that I can look back on that also strengthens my heart. It reminds us that we've gone through tough times. We have. We've gotten through them. And as a matter of fact, sometimes tough times are a catalyst to changes that are extraordinary. And this might be the beginning of a time of extraordinary change, renaissance and revolution. Jewish peoplehood demands that my heart suffers because my people are suffering. When you're connected as a people, when your people suffer, you suffer. When anti-Semitism rears its head in America, and I hear stories from our kids, I need to hide my Judaism. When I hear stories from you about what you experience, when I hear calls for destruction of Israel veiled in some value, my heart aches, and I find the courage to fight, to respond. I look for courage because the moment calls for it. When I think about peoplehood, my passion stokes because I believe that that's what we need to be teaching our children and each of us. That sense of knowing who I am, knowing my values, my language, my obligations, mitzvah, peoplehood creates a deep sense of purpose and pride. And if you asked me, Rabbi, what's the one thing you would say about anti-Semitism? I would say that we need to build Jewish pride. We need to do it intentionally. We need to do it thoughtfully. We need to devote resource upon resource upon resource. We need to have teachers who are excellent. We need to have schools that are compelling. We need to have learning that people flock to. Jewish peoplehood drives me, and I am strengthened as I seek to build it. And yet, so many difficult questions come as I struggle with this value. Can I stay connected to that fellow Jew who might reject that which I feel is my ethical Jewish core? I intuitively am turning away. And as I find myself turning away, that other voice says, don't turn away, find a way. Find a way. Find a way. It feels almost impossible. Can we stay connected as a Jewish people amidst such fundamental differences amongst us? By the way, we've always had a bunch of tribes. But within that sense of tribe, there's been a sense of connectedness. It's fraying. It's fraying, and yes, that fraying pains me, but is there something we can do in response to that fraying? And I ask questions not to suggest answers. I ask questions because those are the questions that Jewish values lift up at this moment. I believe in Ahavat Zion, love of Zion, Israel, Zionism. The state of Israel is the place my ancestors yearned for, felt connection to, built and rebuilt. We thrive because Israel is a Jewish state. By the way, that needs to be developed. We thrive because Israel is a Jewish state. Art, literature, culture, holidays, values, time come alive because this is our state, our place, our home. I can disagree with the government of Israel and love Israel. Somehow that truth has been forgotten. I can disagree with the government of Israel and love Israel. So that Ahavat Zion, that love of Zion, means I viscerally feel the trauma of Israel's losses. And I ask each of you to have that be a piece of your soul. We feel it. It's why I shared story before the prayer for Israel about the human face that I believe we've lost connection with. My Zionism embraces democracy. It embraces Jews and Arabs living side by side with dignity. My Zionism is aspirational, seeking to bring Jewish values to life throughout the country, throughout every policy. I celebrate when I witness this and am part of it, and my heart breaks at how distant these aspirations feel. So where does that leave me? With passion for an activism that allows us to partner with what might be. Dissonance leads to activism. It has to be said, I believe Israel has a right to defend herself from enemies devoted to doing anything to destroy her. Somehow that reality has been lost. Yet so many questions remain for a passionate Zionism. What is that line between self-defense and actions which may not serve that end? How do I share my disagreements with government policy without undermining Israel, especially in the eyes of those who seek to destroy her? How do I respond to my anguish that some leaders wish to turn Israel into an ethno-religious government that may turn a blind eye to settler violence? How do I teach love of Israel at a time when that connection is fraying? How do I stay connected to those who reject Zionism? These questions haunt me. They are hard questions, but I want to say something so important. The hardest questions come from a place of deepest love. Embrace every question. The hardest questions come from the place of deepest love. Let your questions be rooted and grounded in love. A strong community, like I hope we are, has the courage to grapple with tough questions, as opposed to get angry at the person who brings the question that doesn't reflect the conclusion you might want to hear. I worry whether we can sustain that kind of community anywhere in America. I believe that each human being is created b'tselem Elohim in the divine image and of ultimate worth. I cry for all innocents of war. It makes me so mad to hear the perfunctory, we mourn the loss of, when it isn't heartfelt. Because I believe in the dignity of every human being, I feel that in my heart and in my bones. And when civilians suffer, when painful loss happens, I have to feel it. And the second I stop feeling it, I lose that piece of me that values the dignity of every single human being. The scenes from Gaza tear at my soul. It certainly drives me to advocate for humanitarian aid, actually supplied by many countries, to mitigate the horrible situation. Have we become too coarsened to see this? And yes, I get it. Hamas bears responsibility for their actions that create that suffering, embedding in civilian population, intercepting food deliveries, manipulating news. Yes, I understand that. I understand they exploit the crisis, and that story needs to be told, but the crisis is real, and my activism seeks to address this suffering. What is the best way forward? What might make a real difference? And for that, I have a long list. But I want to move to something else connected to Tselem Elohim, the dignity of every human. If we believe in the value of human life, then anyone who's in captivity must be saved. Jewish text says, if you've got all of the materials to build a synagogue and there's a captive, sell the materials and redeem the captive. That's a piece of who we are, because we know that someone in captivity is suffering. And again, that empathy, that connection, we need to feel that agony, the agony of their families. My activism demands that we keep the hostages and their families in the forefront of our communal activism, seeking their release. And what is the right policy for that? What is the right activism that will bring that? That's the question that we need to discuss. We need to struggle together. I believe in emet, in truth. Truth is under attack in shocking ways. I get truth is often frustratingly evasive. Sometimes it's purposefully denied. And in a world where truth is not the highest of values, we've come to expect lies, half-truths, distortions. And those lies have a profound impact on what people believe and on people's well-being. Sadly, because we've become so polarized here and in Israel, truth is whatever best fits your narrative. And anyone who disagrees with you must be a liar or evil. So I call for us to together seek and search and embrace truth. Facts exist. Science is real. And for all that I embrace multiple truths, and I do, sometimes there's only one truth. And acting on that truth needs to be our calling. Discerning what that is. And when there are, in fact, multiple truths, maybe one of the most difficult challenges of this moment. And then being able to stay connected, not to all, but to most who may have different truths, also feels like a call of our time. Let's seek truth as a community. Let's read different points of view. Let's question what we read. Let's discern reliable sources. Let's not allow competing truths to cause us to turn from each other. I believe in shalom, in peace. Every Jewish prayer ends with a call for peace. I believe we have a moral mandate now for visionary peacemaking, and I yearn for leaders with vision and hearts to move us towards peace. Yet it feels so distant. On Yom Kippur during the day, I'll share small steps I believe will plant seeds of peace for the future. And I can't think of a more sacred activism. And I'll share with you that indeed is what strengthens my heart, that I can believe that I can be a part of a different future. Between now and Yom Kippur, let me know what you feel the seeds are to create a little bit of movement towards a peace that feels so distant. Sacred values ground and motivate me at this time. Chazak ve'amatz libecha. Gain strength as you turn to the truths of our people. Find the courage to wrestle with their demands and act. Chazak ve'amatz libecha. Let your heart be strong and courageous. Find the courage to sit with the complexity and different paths emerging from our sacred truths with openness and heart. Chazak ve'amatz libecha. Let's be a community that digs into our heritage, indeed holds multiple truths, listens to each other, discerns when there needs to be a singular truth, treasures each human, and pursues activism. Know that as you move forward, your deepest strength is that you are never alone. Too many times this year I have felt alone and needed to remember that even for that person who might be haranguing me with what they didn't like that I said, I love them. I am connected to them as they are to me. This is the beauty of our people. Hold on to the call of Psalm 27. Let's say it together. Chazak ve'amatz libecha. Let your hearts be strong and courageous. Shana Tova, everyone. Let's sing. Let's sing as people are leaving to kind of continue the feeling of prayer.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Elekocho. Hallelujah, Kiauzo. Hallelujah, Vigorata. Hallelujah, Kerovulo. Ay, ay, ay. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Tap with me. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, beteka shofar. Hallelujah, benever befino. Hallelujah, betov umachor. Hallelujah, biminim ve'ugav yalalai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, betzilzle shama. Hallelujah, betzilzle tuah. Olam shama, te'aleluya.